Hi, Susie Homesteader of the Rockies, and welcome to the Susie Homesteader channel. And you're probably really sick of hearing me talk about thrift stores, which you'll hear me mention in just about every one of my videos. So today we're actually going to do a video on shopping at a thrift store. So you know what they say, one man's junk is another man's treasure. So today we're going to hunt and gather my favorite thing to do at one of my local thrift stores. And this thrift store that I'm in today is one of my favorites, for one thing because it's really small and things don't tend to move too fast. So if you see something in here one day, it might actually be here the next day. And secondly, because this thrift store that I love so much donates 100% of their profits to the food bank right next door. And then the food bank in turn takes some of that to pay their girls to run this facility. So this is a great cause. I certainly spend enough money in here myself, and I'm very happy to hear that that all goes to our local food bank. So again, one of my favorite stores. And they also have some great sales. So as frugal as you can be, there are still ways to save money even at a thrift store. So some of the fun things they do is have like Purple Thursdays or other days where it's just 25% off or even sometimes 50% off. So those would be kind of your key times to go hit those thrift stores as well. And then another great day to shop at your thrift store is usually the day after or a couple days after they're closed. And you know, like any kind of a retail store, that's always the best time to go is the day after that because everything's been restocked. So try and get there, you know, usually it's like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, the beginning of the week after they've had a chance to get through their weekend and put out all the good stuff. So, and another thing you want to do is as soon as you get to that thrift store, whichever store you choose, go straight for the good stuff. So every thrift store kind of has a different forte for what kind of things that they carry in particular compared to some of the other stores. So this store, for example, I just go straight to their furniture, and that stuff kind of comes and goes really fast anyway. But you know, you don't want to waste any time when that good stuff comes out. So if you think the furniture they have there that day is their forte, then go straight to that first. So lots of little tips and tricks for shopping at your thrift store. And again, look for their sales, you know, and there's all kinds of different secondhand stores, there's consignment stores, there's, you know, dollar stores, so many different ways to save money other than paying full retail. So, or full retail. So I will say, I will go to a thrift store or a garage sale or an auction before I'll ever go to any kind of a retail store to find something. So if I can't find it here first, then I may resort to having to pay full price. But there's so many fun things you can find. You just have to keep your eyes open and you have to go in with a plan. So again, we'll talk about that as we go along through the store here, how to kind of have a map for how you're going to shop. You do not want to go into a thrift store with no plan in mind. And it is kind of nice to have a list. So if you have your little list written out, take that with you and keep referring to it. So go with a plan. And another really good thing to do when you go to the thrift store, go for a specific thing. So let's just say it's a holiday and you're looking for more Christmas stuff or more Halloween stuff. Go in there looking just for that. And that's a nice way to stay focused because it's just like getting on Pinterest. You know, you get on that Pinterest site and it's just way too much stuff and it's very overwhelming. So if you go with something in mind, what usually happens, it's kind of like when you're pregnant. When you're pregnant, everybody around you is pregnant. When you're not pregnant, nobody's pregnant. So when you're looking, go with something in mind, and of course you're going to find other things as well. But it is kind of easy to get overwhelmed if you don't go in there with a plan and kind of a map. And if you've already been in that thrift store before, you should know your store and you should kind of know where all the good stuff hides. So lots of fun things to do when you get in there, and we're gonna just kind of go by category. And I, of course, on my website, I have 9 or 10 different categories that I'm always shopping for. So we're gonna just kind of break it down and shop by category. So let's go over to our first section and we'll figure out what kind of fun stuff they have. Okay, so here's one of my favorite sections, which is like the cooking and the kitchen stuff. Now, just remember all this cooking stuff, I mean, it never ends. You could spend your lifetime finding kitchen stuff because there's so many fun and crazy things you thought you had that you still don't have. But one thing I always look for when I get into the kitchen department and the appliances and that kind of stuff is like, for example, if you're trying to find a set or you're trying to find dishes or plates or something, try and find a set, you know, like of 8 or 12. So, you know, don't pick items where there's just like 1 or 2 little things here and there, because you're never going to get it to all match up. So one of the hardest things to find when you're in the cooking section is sets of 8 or 12. But this, and this is, how crazy is that? That looks like enamelware. That's actually plastic. But what a nice set that is for like parties or something. So that's like over a dozen plates, which you never find that. Usually you only find sets of like 3 or 4. So when you're looking for kitchen stuff, try and find the big sets of things. And like I said, even things like that, where that's actually plastic, but it doesn't look plastic. So there's a little tip for you in the kitchen and the cooking section. Okay, so here we are, still in the cooking area. One of my favorites, but again, we're talking about quality, not always quantity. So as much as you're still trying to find things like in bigger sets, which are hard to find, you're still going to look for quality. So some of the funner quality things you want to look for are things like enamelware, which those are very rare. But if you find anything that's enamelware, grab it. That gets harder and harder to find. And the other really great thing to look for in your pots and pans is try and find cast iron stuff. So every once in a while, I find a cast iron skillet or something just kind of hiding. Even if you might have to pay a little bit more for that cast iron, grab it anyway, because it is 3 times as expensive anywhere else you're going to find it. So enamelware, cast iron, anything when it comes to metal or pots and pans or silverware, we're going to look for quality. All right, still in cooking. Sorry, my favorite section, I can't leave it. I find so many fun appliances. Crock pots. You're always going to find a crock pot at a thrift store. Make sure it has a lid when you do find one. You can kind of never really have enough of those, and they're pretty sturdy and they hang in there for a long time. So great idea on thrift store appliances. And some of the things that you don't really want to go for when it comes to appliances is just kind of some of the cheaper stuff, because for one thing, it's probably not going to last you too long, but and you might be able to buy it brand new at the same price. So even something like an older blender like this at a thrift store is still a better quality than a newer one that's lesser quality. So when it comes to your appliances and stuff, or even electronics, anything like that, you know, number one, make sure it's working, which your thrift store should probably do for you in advance. And they will tell you if it's been tested, hopefully been tested, or if it's already, you know, made sure that it works, or parts of it doesn't work. But most of the time they won't sell you anything that doesn't work anyway. Yeah, and parties, you know, don't leave that cooking and kitchen section yet until you thought about all the stuff you need for your next party. Okay, so back to party stuff, back to holidays, which is another one of my favorites. One of the best deals you're going to get is buying things when it's not that holiday. So if it's Halloween and they have Halloween stuff out, go for the hula skirts, or go for something that has to do with the summertime, and you'll get a way better deal. So buying things out of season, just like they kind of do in the big retail stores, is another way to shop. Okay, crafting, my other favorite section. Paper mache, great stuff for kids to paint or use for holidays. Shells, you never get enough fun little seashells for other little projects. You'll see stuff like patterns, you know, which is a real popular one. You might even find some vintage patterns for sewing in here. And then one of my favorite things I always grab is just some scrap fabric. You never, for some strange reason, you never know what you're going to use it for, but just have it so that when you think of something, it's available. But just grab little pretty things, pretty scraps that you like, and before you know it, you're using it. So lots of fun stuff in the craft section. Again, just think about things you might not even need. And don't pass up the sports section, because especially if you're a homeschool mom and you do your own PE, you need all kinds of sports equipment. So don't ever pass it up. pink or not. Go for the sports equipment. Okay, moving on down the line here. So we're now in office and school supplies, especially if you're a homeschool mom. I don't know what it is. I never have enough clipboards, and you're always going to need a hole punch. So rifle through those little office supplies, and sometimes I've even found some great electronic games and educational toys for kids just that work really good for homeschooling. So make sure you hit the office supplies. Okay, here we go again. Homeschooling, desktop monitors, some other electronics. Sometimes you can find some good printers if they're not too old and you still can match up the ink cartridges to them. So lots of electronics that you can use your homeschool or your office. Okay, so while you're in the landscaping and the gardening section, here we go, solar lights. So if you don't actually need any more solar lights and you already have them, which kind of starts to happen when you get to my age, all of a sudden you get into a thrift store and you have things that you really don't need, think twice, because I just used a whole bunch of these in my Halloween graveyard. So here we go again, we're repurposing and rethinking. So even if you have it and you think there's a possibility you might need it, take it anyway. Solar lights, you can use them for everything. Okay, so here we are in the furniture section, another one of my favorites. And sometimes, you know, it's actually worth paying a little bit more for something, especially if it's something like a solid oak table. These are the kind of materials that you just don't find anymore, and even if it's a little bit used, it's almost worth paying a little bit more for just to get that kind of quality and something you're just not going to find very often. So here's a good example, a beautiful oak table with some little oak chairs, probably really old, but obviously they lasted a long time. So don't be afraid to spend a little bit more for something that you know is high quality. Okay, back to beauty. Don't ask me how this ever became popular. To this day, I don't understand the flat curling iron, because I spent my entire life trying to have big hair and curly hair. But today, it's straight hair, so there you go. Beauty section, flat iron. And you know, some people still use these curlers, so if you're not interested in straight hair, go for the curly, because that's what I like. Okay, so here we are. We hit the vintage section, and I know you're thinking bowling ball bag, but believe it or not, well, there is bowling ball in here, but these are making a comeback as purses. So you got to think outside the box a little bit, because it may look like just a bowling ball bag to you, but that's a purse to somebody else. So when you're looking for vintage items, sometimes they're really, really old, like something like this, where that's probably not something you're going to use. It's just something you're going to display, versus another vintage item, which this one might actually still work and might even work better than the ones they make today. Vintage shoes to you, Halloween costume to me. Okay, and not to date myself, but snakeskin was way in the 80s. Well, it's making a comeback. And you thought you had the ugly Christmas sweater? Here's your ugly Christmas shoes to go with it. Okay, so here we go again. Bridesmaid's dress? I don't know. Halloween costume, if you ask me. So here we go again. Let's repurpose. And let's head over here, because here's one of my favorite things to do. So you'll hear me talk about using scarves all the time. Here's our little fun scarf selection. So pick a scarf you like that might correlate to a holiday and throw it on the back of a chair. This is where I get all my fun little chair accents. So there's another idea for you. Just think outside the box. So when you are looking for clothes, for your own women's clothes, you know, the best thing you can do in a thrift store is just stick to the classics. So, you know, even if it's borderline vintage, just still stick to classics, because this, for example, this suede jacket here, this could be in for the next 10 years. I mean, you just don't know, or it could be out of style. But for the most part, you can make that work. So don't go for trendy, don't go for retro, just go for the classics when you're buying clothes. So it'll come in at some point in time, I promise. Oh my God, gotta have it. See, some of these little things, they hide them. Fedora, gotta have it. Oh my God. Now that is what you call a wedge. Don't gotta have it. That's old. No, that's okay. Okay, so don't just think about shopping in the girls section either. Sometimes some of the best quality and the best clothes you're going to find are going to be in the men's section. So, you know, kind of like this wool jacket I have on, this was designed to be a woman's jacket, but I found this in a whole different area. So don't just go to the girls section. But this is one of my favorite jackets. It's all wool. You know, you can't buy this for the 20 bucks I paid these days. This was probably like a, you know, $200 jacket in its day. It is old, but it is intact, so that's what we're looking for. But you can use, you know, again, I hate to say it, but back in the 80s, men's jackets were really big when it came to a woman needing a kind of a sports coat thing. It was kind of a little Ralph Lauren-ish, you know, but it's making a comeback, and even those equestrian boots are making a comeback. So again, this could very easily be a little coat for a woman too. So look in the men's section, and then there you go. There's another Halloween costume, Beetlejuice. You never know what you're gonna find. So don't just shop in the women's section. Shop everywhere. Okay, so yeah, that says man cave. And you can see there's lots of goodies, man cave stuff in there, but don't ever just shop by department either, like we just talked about, because here it is, Hello Kitty steering wheel cover in the man cave, and a pink balloon time tank, which I'm gonna get before I leave here. So there's a helium tank and a Hello Kitty steering wheel. These are going home with me, and those are in the man cave. And so where in the world are you ever gonna find something like a tie chart? So if you have some color challenged men in your life that still wear ties, even if it's a tie, a polyester tie from the 70s, or one with lizards on it, you still need your handy dandy tie chart. You'll never find this online, I promise. So there it is. It tells you exactly what tie to wear, what shirt, and what suit to match your tie to. There it is, folks. Tie chart. So let's get started. Subscribe to the Susie Homesteader channel, and we'll see you there. Bye-bye.